The marble lobby of Sterling Enterprises gleamed under crystal chandeliers, a monument to wealth and power. Elena Martinez pushed her cleaning cart across the polished floor, invisible to the executives who rushed past in tailored suits. She had worked nights here for 3 years, supporting her younger sister through college after their parents passed away. The building emptied after 7, leaving her alone with the echo of her footsteps and the hum of vacuum cleaners. That evening, as she wiped down the reception desk, she heard uncertain footsteps behind her. A young man stood near the elevator bank, his white cane sweeping the floor in hesitant arcs. He couldn't have been more than 25, dressed in expensive clothes that hung awkwardly on his thin frame, his face turned left and right, clearly disoriented. Elena set down her cloth and approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. She noticed his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the cane. "Excuse me?" she said softly in English, though her accent carried the warmth of her Mexican heritage. "Do you need help?" The young man's shoulders relaxed at her voice. His unseeing eyes turned toward her, and she noticed they were a striking blue-gray, like storm clouds. "I'm trying to find the exit," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "My driver was supposed to meet me in the lobby, but I got turned around." Elena looked at the vast space with its multiple corridors and revolving doors. For someone without sight, it would be a maze. She glanced at her cart, then back at him. Her supervisor would be furious if she left her duties, but she couldn't abandon someone who needed help. Some things mattered more than rules. Elena gently touched his elbow, the way her aunt had taught her when helping elderly neighbors. The young man flinched but didn't pull away. "My name is Elena. I'll help you to the main entrance. May I guide you?" He nodded, his jaw relaxing. She noticed the designer label on his jacket, the expensive watch on his wrist. This was someone from a different world, yet here in this moment, he was simply a person who needed kindness. They moved slowly across the lobby, Elena describing each step. She told him about the marble columns they passed, the fountain in the center with its soft, trickling water, the slight incline near the revolving doors. He listened intently, his posture gradually straightening. "You're very patient," he said, as they navigated around a potted palm. "Most people just grab my arm and drag me along." Elena felt a pang of sadness at his words. She thought of her own struggles, how people often overlooked her because of her uniform, her accent. Perhaps everyone carried invisible burdens. "Everyone deserves dignity," she replied simply. They reached the main entrance where a sleek black car waited, its driver standing beside it. The driver's eyes widened when he saw them together, then quickly schooled his expression into professional neutrality. The young man turned toward Elena, his hand reaching out. She took it briefly, noting the strength in his grip despite his earlier vulnerability. "Thank you," he said with genuine warmth. "You didn't have to help me." Elena smiled, though he couldn't see it. Somehow, she felt he sensed it anyway. "We all need help sometimes," she said. She watched him climb into the car, then return to her cart. The supervisor would dock her pay for the delay, but she felt no regret. Some moments transcended the ordinary rules of life. Marcus Sterling stood in his penthouse office 60 floors above the city, reviewing acquisition reports on his tablet. At 42, he had built an empire through calculated decisions and unwavering focus. Emotions were liabilities in business, and he had learned to suppress them completely after his wife's death 7 years ago. His assistant entered, tablet in hand. Marcus barely glanced up. "The security footage you requested, sir," she said, setting the device on his desk. Marcus had asked to review last night's lobby cameras after his son David mentioned being helped by a janitor. His security team needed to know who had access to his son. He pulled up the video, watching with clinical detachment. The footage showed a woman in a cleaning uniform approaching David. Marcus leaned forward, studying her face. She looked young, perhaps late 20s, with dark hair pulled back practically. Her movements were gentle as she guided David across the expansive lobby, stopping to describe architectural details he couldn't see. Marcus replayed the segment, watching her expressions. There was no calculation in her eyes, no recognition of opportunity. She treated David with simple human kindness, asking nothing in return. When David offered his hand in thanks, she held it briefly, then disappeared back to her cleaning cart. Marcus froze the frame on her face. Something about the scene unsettled him, though he couldn't identify why. In his world, everyone wanted something. Kindness always came with a price tag, negotiations, expectations. Yet this woman had helped his son and walked away, returning to scrub floors for minimum wage. He opened his employee database and searched the cleaning staff roster. Elena Martinez, night shift, 3 years of service, no disciplinary actions. The file contained only basic information. Marcus closed the tablet, troubled by thoughts he couldn't quite name. 3 nights later, David insisted on staying late at the office to finish reviewing audio files for his father's company. Despite his blindness, he worked in the accessibility consulting division, helping Sterling Enterprises design products for people with disabilities. It gave him purpose, though Marcus often worried about him navigating the building alone. David sat in the conference room, headphones on, when he heard the cleaning cart approach. He recognized the gentle rhythm of movement, the soft humming of a Spanish melody. His heart quickened with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. "Elena?" he called out, removing his headphones. The humming stopped. Footsteps approached, and he caught the faint scent of lemon cleaner and something else, perhaps lavender. "You remember my name?" Elena said, surprise evident in her voice. David smiled, turning his face toward her. Since the accident that took his sight 5 years ago, he had learned to rely on other senses. Her voice carried warmth that most people in his life lacked. "You're the first person in this building who treated me like a human being instead of a liability," he said honestly. "Of course I remember." Elena was quiet for a moment. David wondered what expression crossed her face. He had learned to read silences, the way people breathed when they were thinking, uncomfortable, or moved. Her silence felt contemplative, kind. "Would you like coffee?" she asked finally. "I was about to make some for myself." David's smile widened. In his world of assistants, drivers, and carefully managed schedules, someone was offering to share coffee with him. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The simplicity of it made his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. He nodded, unable to trust his voice for a moment. Together they walked to the break room, and David felt more alive than he had in years. The break room was quiet, the building settling into its nighttime stillness. Elena prepared the coffee while David sat at the small table, his cane resting against the chair. She noticed how he oriented himself carefully, his hands finding the table's edge, the back of the chair, creating a mental map of the space. "Sugar?" she asked, pouring 2 cups. "Black is fine," he replied. "You work every night?" Elena set the cup carefully in front of him, guiding his hand to it. Their fingers touched briefly, and she noticed his surprised intake of breath. "Monday through Friday," she said, sitting across from him. "Sometimes weekends when they need extra coverage. My sister is in her final year of medical school. Just a little longer, then things will be easier." David absorbed this information, piecing together her life from fragments. She worked overnight, sacrificed her own comfort for family, spoke with pride about her sister's achievements. He thought of his own privileged existence, how different their worlds were. "That's admirable," he said softly. "Family matters." Elena watched him over her coffee cup. Despite his expensive clothes and obvious wealth, something vulnerable existed in his posture, the way his fingers traced the cup's rim as if memorizing its shape. She wondered about his story, what had stolen his sight, why he seemed so isolated despite having everything money could buy. "What happened to your eyes?" she asked, then immediately regretted the directness. I'm sorry. That was too personal. David shook his head, a sad smile playing at his lips. He rarely spoke about the accident, but something about Elena's presence made him want to share. Car crash 5 years ago. My mother died. I survived but lost my sight. Elena's heart contracted with empathy. She reached across the table instinctively, her hand covering his. This time, he didn't pull away. Marcus worked late that Friday, reviewing quarterly reports when his office phone buzzed. Security, calling about an unusual situation. He listened, his expression darkening, then took the elevator down to the 42nd floor. Through the break room's glass wall, he saw them. David and the janitor, Elena, sitting together, coffee cups between them. David was laughing at something she said, his face transformed by genuine joy. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he had seen his son truly happy. He stood frozen, watching this impossible scene. His son, who barely spoke during family dinners, animated and engaged with a woman who cleaned toilets for a living. Anger flared initially. How dare she take advantage of David's loneliness? But as he watched longer, the anger faded into something more complex. Elena wasn't fawning or manipulating. She treated David normally, teasing him gently about something, her laugh musical and unforced. David responded with quick wit, his usual guardedness completely absent. They looked like two young people simply enjoying each other's company, the vast gulf of their circumstances irrelevant in this small moment. Marcus thought of his own loneliness, the empty penthouse he returned to each night, the endless work that filled his days but not the hollow space in his chest. When had he last laughed like David was laughing now? When had anyone looked at him with uncomplicated warmth instead of calculation? He turned away before they noticed him, returning to the elevator with troubled thoughts. This woman was disrupting the carefully ordered world he had built. She made him question things he had accepted as immutable truths. That was dangerous. Yet as the elevator climbed, he couldn't forget the sound of his son's laughter echoing through the empty building. Monday morning, Marcus called his head of HR into his office. Margaret Chen had worked for Sterling Enterprises for 15 years and understood his management style perfectly. She sat across from him, waiting. "Elena Martinez, night custodial staff," Marcus said without preamble. "Pull her file." Margaret's fingers flew across her tablet. She had learned not to question his requests, understanding that Marcus Sterling operated on information and strategy. Within seconds, Elena's employment record appeared. "Exemplary performance reviews," Margaret read. "Perfect attendance except for 2 days 3 years ago when her younger sister had emergency surgery. Works additional shifts when requested. Declined promotion to day shift supervisor last year. Currently supporting said sister through medical school at Columbia. No complaints, no incidents." Marcus absorbed this information, his analytical mind working through implications. Elena was exactly what she appeared to be. A hard-working woman making sacrifices for family. No hidden agenda, no opportunistic motives. That made his decision more difficult. "I want her transferred," he said finally. Margaret looked up, surprise flickering across her professional demeanor. Transfers were unusual without cause, particularly for someone with Elena's record. "To which location, sir?" Marcus stood, walking to the window. The city sprawled below, thousands of lives intersecting in invisible patterns. One decision from him could alter someone's entire trajectory. Power was both burden and privilege. "Promote her," he said, the words surprising even himself. "Create a position in our community relations department. Day shift, better salary, benefits package. Make it look like a standard promotional opportunity, not charity." Margaret made notes, then hesitated. She knew Marcus well enough to recognize when something personal drove business decisions. "May I ask why?" Marcus turned back to her, his expression unreadable. because she made my son laugh, because she represents something I thought no longer existed, because she threatens everything I believe about human nature, and I need to control that threat. Because good employees should be rewarded, he said simply. Elena stared at the letter in her small apartment, reading it 3 times to ensure she understood correctly. A promotion, a significant salary increase, day shift hours, benefits including health insurance that would cover her sister's remaining medical school costs. It seemed impossible, like winning a lottery she hadn't entered. Her sister Maria looked over her shoulder, squealing with excitement. After years of Elena working nights, sacrificing sleep and social life, cleaning up after people who never acknowledged her existence, finally, something good was happening. Maria hugged her tightly, already planning how this would change their lives, but Elena felt unease beneath the excitement. She had worked 3 years without recognition, then suddenly this opportunity appeared days after helping David Sterling. Coincidence? Or something else? She thought about David, their coffee conversations that had continued each night last week. He made her laugh with his dry humor, listened with genuine interest when she talked about her family, shared stories about his mother with a vulnerability that touched her heart. She had looked forward to seeing him each evening, the unexpected friendship brightening her difficult shifts. Would accepting this promotion mean leaving the night shift? Would she still see David? And more troubling, was this promotion somehow connected to him? The thought made her uncomfortable. She didn't want charity or favors. She had always earned her own way, maintaining dignity even while scrubbing floors. Elena looked at the letter again, at the salary that would transform her circumstances, at the opportunity that seemed too perfect. Her pride warred with practicality. Maria needed stability. They deserved security after years of struggle. Yet accepting felt like stepping into something she didn't fully understand, a world where kindness somehow became transaction. She folded the letter carefully, decision unmade, and prepared for her night shift with a troubled heart. That night, Elena found David waiting in the break room. He had arrived early, and his expression showed he knew about the promotion. Someone must have told him. The air between them felt different, charged with unspoken questions. "Congratulations," David said, his voice careful. "My father's assistant mentioned the announcement." Elena set down her cleaning supplies slowly, processing his words. His father, Marcus Sterling, the billionaire CEO whose company she worked for, whose building she cleaned. David's father had orchestrated this promotion. "Did you ask him to do this?" The question emerged sharper than she intended, hurt and pride mixing in her tone. David's face showed genuine surprise, then understanding, then something like pain. His hands gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. "No," he said firmly. "I didn't know until today. Elena, I would never—" He stopped, taking a breath. "I value what we have. I wouldn't cheapen it with manipulation." Elena wanted to believe him. His distress seemed real, his offense at the suggestion authentic. But doubt had taken root, poisoning the simple joy of their friendship. In her experience, wealthy people always had agendas, ways of controlling situations subtly. Kindness always came with invisible strings. "This happened right after I helped you," she said quietly. "After we started talking. What am I supposed to think?" David stood, his cane finding the floor automatically. He moved toward her voice with surprising accuracy, stopping just before reaching her. His unseeing eyes seemed to look directly at her, and she saw raw emotion in his face. "Think that maybe, just maybe, my father recognized your value," he said, voice rough. "Think that you deserve opportunities. Think that I'm terrified you'll take this job and I'll never see you again." The last sentence hung between them, vulnerable and honest. Elena's breath caught at the naked emotion in his voice. Elena accepted the promotion, but negotiated to work partially overlapping hours, telling HR she needed time to train her replacement. The truth was, she couldn't leave without understanding what was happening, without seeing David one more time. She needed to know if their connection was real or constructed. On her first day in the new position, Marcus Sterling requested her presence in his office. Elena rode the elevator 60 floors up, her heart pounding. The executive level was another universe, all glass and steel and intimidating luxury. She felt small in her new professional clothes, purchased hastily from a department store. Marcus stood by the window, his back to her as she entered. He turned, and Elena saw David's features in his face, but hardened by years of command and control. His eyes were sharp, assessing, missing nothing. "Miss Martinez," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit." Elena sat on the edge of the leather chair, hands folded in her lap. She had cleaned this office 100 times, but never imagined sitting here as anything but invisible labor. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Sterling," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm grateful." Marcus studied her with unsettling intensity. He saw a young woman trying to maintain dignity while clearly uncomfortable, someone out of her element but refusing to show weakness. He recognized the quality because he had cultivated it in himself years ago. "You've been spending time with my son," he said, not as accusation but statement. Elena met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated. She thought of David's loneliness, his isolation, how he had blossomed during their conversations. If Marcus wanted to punish her for that simple kindness, she would accept consequences with head high. "David is my friend," she said simply. "If that's a problem, I understand." Marcus was silent for a long moment, something shifting behind his controlled expression. Marcus walked to his desk, picked up a photograph, and handed it to Elena. The image showed a beautiful woman with warm eyes, laughing while holding a young boy who looked like David. The scene radiated joy and love, captured in a moment of perfect happiness. "My wife, Catherine," Marcus said, his voice unusually soft. "She died in the same accident that took David's sight. They were coming to meet me for dinner. A drunk driver ran a red light." Elena looked at the photograph, then at Marcus, seeing past the intimidating exterior to the grief he carried. She understood loss. Her parents had died in a factory fire when she was 21, leaving her to raise Maria alone. Grief created a universal language. "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it deeply. Marcus took the photograph back, placing it carefully on his desk. He sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his 42 years. "David blamed himself for surviving. He withdrew from everyone, including me. I threw myself into work because I didn't know how else to cope. We became strangers living in the same city, connected by blood, but separated by guilt and pain." He looked directly at Elena. "Then you helped him cross a lobby, and something changed." Elena felt tears prick her eyes at the raw honesty in his voice. This powerful man was showing her his deepest wounds, trusting her with his vulnerability. "I watched you together on security footage," Marcus continued. "I saw my son laugh for the first time in 5 years. You gave him something I couldn't. You treated him normally without pity or fear. You saw him as a person, not a disability or a tragedy." Understanding dawned. The promotion wasn't manipulation or control. It was a father's desperate gratitude, an attempt to keep his son's lifeline close. The realization shifted everything Elena had believed about the situation. Marcus stood, walking to the window again. The city stretched below them, millions of lives playing out in buildings and streets, each person carrying their own burdens and hopes. "I'm not good at asking for help," he said, his back still to Elena. "I built this company by being self-sufficient, by never showing weakness. But I'm asking now, don't disappear from David's life. He needs you." Elena heard the unspoken words beneath his request. I need you. I need someone who can reach my son when I can't. I need to know he won't be alone." "I wasn't planning to disappear," she said gently. "David is my friend. That doesn't change because of a job title." Marcus turned back to her, and Elena saw something crack in his carefully maintained armor. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. He had expected her to see the promotion as transactional, to either refuse it or accept it with opportunistic calculation. Her simple honesty disarmed him completely. "Why did you help him that first night?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "You could have called security, let someone else deal with it. Why risk your job to help a stranger?" Elena thought about her answer carefully. She remembered seeing David's uncertainty, his vulnerability, how he reminded her of herself when she first arrived in this country, lost and frightened and alone. She remembered her parents' teaching that kindness cost nothing but meant everything. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said finally. "Because everyone deserves dignity. Because when we forget to help each other, we lose the most important part of being human." Marcus sat down again, absorbing her words. In his world of board meetings and hostile takeovers, of billion-dollar deals and calculated risks, he had forgotten such simple truths. This young woman, who had every reason to be bitter about life's unfairness, chose kindness instead. She humbled him. 3 months passed. Elena excelled in her new role, developing community programs that genuinely helped people rather than serving as corporate publicity. Marcus watched her work with grudging admiration. She refused to compromise her values for political convenience, standing firm even when executives pressured her to prioritize optics over substance. David's transformation was even more remarkable. He started attending company events again, his confidence growing. He and Elena had lunch together twice weekly, their friendship deepening into something neither could quite define, but both cherished. David had begun smiling again, engaging with life instead of merely surviving it. Marcus observed these changes from his office, feeling something shift inside himself. Elena's presence in the company had rippled outward, affecting people beyond David. Employees smiled more in the hallways. The atmosphere felt less cutthroat, more collaborative. She represented a value system he had abandoned years ago, believing it incompatible with success. One evening, Marcus found himself in the break room where David and Elena had first shared coffee. He made a cup, sitting at the table where his son had laughed with genuine joy. The building was empty, the city lights glittering through windows, and Marcus felt the weight of his loneliness acutely. His phone buzzed with another acquisition opportunity, another deal that would increase his wealth and influence. He looked at it, then set it aside. When had success become synonymous with isolation? When had he stopped being human and become merely successful? He thought of Catherine, of the man he had been when she was alive, warmer, more present, capable of joy. Her death had hardened him, but perhaps that hardness was choice rather than necessity. Perhaps Elena had shown him another path, one that led back to the person he used to be. The company's annual gala arrived, a glittering affair of champagne and designer gowns. Elena attended reluctantly, uncomfortable with such displays of wealth. She wore a simple black dress, feeling out of place among socialites and executives. Then she saw David arrive with his father, both in immaculate tuxedos. David's face lit up when Elena approached, his hand reaching for hers naturally. She took it, feeling the familiar spark of connection between them. Marcus watched this exchange, seeing something he had missed before. This wasn't just friendship. His son was falling in love, perhaps had already fallen. The evening progressed with speeches and awards. When Marcus took the stage, everyone expected the usual corporate platitudes. Instead, he looked directly at Elena in the crowd, then at David beside her. "This year taught me something unexpected," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. We measure success by profits and market share, by power and influence. We forget to measure kindness, compassion, the simple act of helping someone across a lobby. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the Marcus Sterling anyone knew. Someone showed my son dignity when he felt invisible. She asked for nothing in return, expected nothing. Her kindness saved him, and in doing so, she saved me too. She reminded me what truly matters. Marcus's eyes found Elena's, holding her gaze. Thank you, Miss Martinez. For seeing people instead of positions, for choosing compassion over convenience. You exemplify everything this company should aspire to be. The ballroom erupted in applause. David squeezed Elena's hand, tears streaming down his face. Elena looked at Marcus on the stage, seeing past the billionaire to the father, the widower, the man who had forgotten how to be human until someone reminded him. Later, David found Elena on the balcony overlooking the city. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "He's right, you know," David said softly. "You saved us both." Elena turned to him, seeing his face in the moonlight, his unseeing eyes somehow finding hers perfectly. He raised his hand, gently touching her cheek. "I can't see you," he whispered, "but I know you're beautiful, not because of how you look, but because of who you are." Elena's breath caught as David leaned closer. Their lips met softly, tentatively, a kiss that held all the hope and healing they had given each other. When they parted, Elena rested her forehead against his, their hands intertwined. Behind them, through the glass doors, Marcus watched his son finally find peace. He smiled, genuinely, for the first time in 5 years. Sometimes the greatest acts of love required the smallest gestures. Sometimes saving someone meant simply walking beside them across a lobby, treating them with dignity, seeing them as human. Elena had taught them all that lesson, and in doing so, she had healed 3 broken hearts, including her own.